Hey guys, Kiwi here. Today I wanted to talk about the newest episode of Fear the Walking Dead, Season 2, Episode 12, and goddamn, I'll admit, it was a pretty good episode. This episode is ultimately starting and foreshadowing a massive reunion between all the different groups of the survivors we have going on in the show currently. So at first, I want to talk about the Colonia, then we'll get more into Ophelia along with Madison's group. This episode starts out with the family, Francisco's family from the sneak peek, leaving the Colonia and them confronting the little girl, which honestly reminded me a lot of Sam from No Way Out in the regular Walking Dead, but unlike Sam, she actually does a good job at keeping her cool as they escape using the guts trick. Although I originally liked them using the guts trick in this show, it's definitely become overused and unrealistic. And the overuse may be on purpose, but I'm going to get more into that in a future video. But what I'll say now is that I feel like they use it in the wrong way, and it's a complete excuse to get out of situations. It makes sense that Francisco, along with the rest of the Colonia scouts, would know about the guts trick to get in and out, but did they ever give an explanation of how the Colonia originally figured it out? I swear Louisiana and the Colonia were already well aware of this trick before they started communicating with Nick. When we very first see Louisiana and she's staring at Nick on the highway in I think episode 8 of this season, they're already covered in guts. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they already know this. They already have the wall. It's already been established. So how did the Colonia figure it out? Was that a conversation that I just completely missed? Well, anyways, so back to Francisco escaping the Colonia. It turns out to be a horrible mistake, as the cartel finds him and expecting him to be the runner bringing them Oxy. Obviously he isn't, and when Francisco has no Oxy, they get enraged and skeptical, kidnapping him and his two daughters. Francisco was the man in the previous episode who found Louisiana's brother Pablo, and deserted the Colonia of fear for his family. Alejandro is extremely offended by this and orders that no one leaves the Colonia. Alejandro seems to be having the same mental issue as Rick Grimes. He's cracking over pressure, saying things such as, "I didn't ask to be the one to make decisions." It's obvious he's in way over his head. Personally, I like Alejandro, although he definitely loves power, and it seems like he never wanted it, but he likes being in power. He doesn't want people to question him, and to a certain extent he has definitely created some sort of religious cults, and I mean, it does keep the people going, it keeps them happy, but it is what it is nonetheless, right? So Louisiana and Nick argue about leaving the Colonia to bring the cartel Oxy or not. Nick believes that they are simply waiting for their drugs, and that if we bring them what they'll want, they'll go easy on us and maybe even trade some water and supplies still. Although Louisiana and especially Alejandro are stubborn when it comes to believing in the Colonia and staying safe, Nick seems to underestimate the cartel and their intentions. They are also unaware that Francisco along with his family are being threatened and interrogated for information, but more on that later. Let's move on to Ophelia and her significance in this episode, which is honestly nothing more than setup, and it seems completely forced. If you guys want to hear more of my opinions on Ophelia, along with predictions for what she'll end up doing, check out my previous video. There'll be an annotation at the end. So, in this episode, it shows her entering the hotel and restaurant as we get a flashback revealing that it was the place she got proposed to. This flashback shows some important light on her backstory, and also stresses the importance her parents had to her as they moved to America for her to have a better life. She would feel guilty moving away from her parents with her fiancé, and to be honest, I wasn't really that intrigued, as Ophelia has been relatively bland up until this point, just her character in general, and I'm hoping that they change my opinion of her, but to be honest, if they were going to give me backstory of her, more backstory, they should have done it earlier on, and I get maybe they didn't have the time, but I mean, these flashbacks came out of nowhere. We didn't see her for a few episodes, and all of a sudden, she's in this restaurant and hotel, and we're talking about her fiancé, and then a flashback of her and her mom. I mean, I liked the flashbacks. I liked it all, but it just seems out of place, it seems forced. It seems like forced setup, and I don't know. I just feel like they could have done it better. And so we get another flashback of Ophelia talking to her mother, who explains why she got together with her dad and why they moved to America and away from their horrible surroundings, all for Ophelia, to give her a better life. All the flashbacks focused on Ophelia as a character, along with the strong bond between her and her parents that leads me to believe that she will somehow reunite with Daniel by the end of the season, her dad. Could they be setting up Ophelia to find her father? I believe that she has to reconnect with someone, whether it be the Colonia, or maybe she'll even run into the cartel. That's a stretch. I don't think she'll run into Travis because he sees the hotel lights. He's probably going to go there. Maybe she'll run into Chris and his little gang of new homies that he has. Or maybe her father Daniel. There has to be a significant result of her wandering around on her own. I mean, I get that Madison and Alicia and Strand aren't her family, but like, if she just leaves and takes the truck for no reason. So I really hope that she runs into someone, even if it's Alex and Jack, those two forgotten characters from season 2A when Alicia got kidnapped. Like, even if it's them, hell, if it's Tobias somehow, rip Tobias. I mean, I just want her to come back into the story in an epic and realistic way. I guess I probably shouldn't have mentioned Tobias if I wanted it to be realistic, but moving on. I'm just gonna come out and say this. Strand gets stabbed in the stupidest way. I've seen the clip of him being injured before since the season 2B started in the initial trailer, and multiple times since. I hate to be negative with this show, but I've been waiting on the end of my seat to see what happens, and it was a bit of a letdown. I was expecting something more interesting or intriguing than what happened. I suppose for anyone that's not expecting Strand to get injured in this episode, or even at all, would see this as a complete surprise and shock, but even then it could have been executed better. The Psycho Eileen chick was mad at Strand for putting down the zombie version of her daughter at the end of the last episode, because that was the dude's wife that Strand had the conversation about, so I guess she found out in between the two episodes and contemplated murdering Strand, and I don't know, man, it's all weird. She's insane on so many levels, and like, the group was seriously debating keeping her around while they are surrounding Strand, bleeding all over the bed because of her. Like, Madison, you're a bit late making leadership roles. No amount of reasoning could ever get to that chick. And I mean, I guess they had to talk about it. They're not just gonna be like, oh yeah, let's go gun her down in cold blood, but I mean, like, seriously, like, you can't consider keeping her here. I mean, like, I get those people know her, and he is what, that one dude is her stepson. Come on, she has to get kicked out. So she has to, maybe she'll run away from them and end up getting eaten by zombies, and that'll just resolve her character issue, like, totally. But I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. Regardless of all that, though, the situation was definitely created as a plot device for Elena to bring Madison to the warehouse where the cartel is. That being said, I'm glad that they slowly built up reasoning and explanations for it throughout the past episodes, instead of them just randomly stumbling across someone from another group. Even though I don't like the reasoning for it, Strand getting injured, it's better than nothing, and I was not expecting Elena to be the one to have the inside knowledge of the cartel, triggering the beginning of multiple reunions as Madison gets clues as to Nick's whereabouts. Things get really interesting as Madison overhears Francisco being interrogated about the Colonia, and Elena's uninterested translations were enough hints for Madison to know it's her son Nick. I was expecting more of a reunion or some sort of connection between the communities this episode, but I was not expecting this. I figured Ophelia would run into someone, which will hopefully still happen, but instead we get a completely different chain of events. I actually really enjoyed this choice of storytelling on how Madison causes conflict as she's trying to get more information about her son. She can tell Francisco and her daughter know more, and it really pains the daughter to keep her mouth shut about Nick as she's trying to protect the location of the Colonia above anything else. Elena's son tells her that the cartel won't be in the warehouse much longer, implying that they're moving location. Does this mean that the cartel is planning on taking over the Colonia and living there themselves? We see the cartel scouts spying on Nick through the binoculars, and the cartel knows where the Colonia is now, and they might want to take it over for themselves and live there. Maybe it's still possible for Ophelia to run into the Colonia somehow and find Nick, and then maybe the cartel attacks the Colonia, causing Nick and maybe Alejandro and Luisiana to flee with Ophelia back to the hotel, bringing all of the main people from the Colonia back to the hotel, and the Colonia getting destroyed or maybe overrun by the cartel, and then the hotel group tries getting revenge for Nick. I mean, like, that's just a far-fetched theory, but it is definitely possible. I'm really wanting this show to blow my mind. Maybe not Game of Thrones or Season 6 Walking Dead type of blow my mind, but, like, I still want there to be amazing payoffs. I still have hope for this show. We also get a back and forth between Strand and Alicia as they discuss Alicia's independence and getting Madison to truly notice her for who she is. Alicia reflects on Nick, saying that she misses who he was, but not who he's become. Alicia hates who her brother has become for sure. She's mad at him for choosing himself and zombies over her and her mother. She's also mad that him leaving has resulted in Madison once again going crazy trying to find him. All that being said, Alicia brought up everything at the wrong time to Madison, or at least in the wrong way. It was in the heat of the moment. I understand she feels neglected, and although Madison has apologized to her, it still doesn't truly heal the pain she felt. She's still jealous over the fact that Madison wants to find Nick and is so obsessed over him. Let's stop for a second. Hypothetically, if Madison was with Nick right now at the hotel, and Alicia was the one that abandoned them, Madison would still be trying to look for Alicia just as much as she is for Nick. And if Madison overheard something about Alicia, you bet your ass that she'd be acting the same way. It's not like she cares for Nick more than Alicia. She knows Alicia is safe. She doesn't know the same about Nick. Whether it's Travis, Chris, Alicia, or Nick who split up from Madison, she's always still worried about said person. Think back to Season 2A when Alicia and Travis got kidnapped. It's not like Madison cared any less about getting them back than she does Nick now. In fact, that was all she cared about. She was just as obsessed about getting Alicia back then as she is about getting Nick back now. She accepted the fact that she'd probably never see Nick again and gave up hope. Alicia thought it was finally over, but then Madison just so happened to overhear something about Nick and got excited over it. Can you blame her? Her child is always her child, and just because she says that passionately about Nick doesn't mean she thinks any less about Alicia. All that means is that even though Nick has abandoned her, she doesn't care. She will always be his mother, and she will always want to protect him. Now, during the beginning of the show, I never really liked Madison. I'll go ahead and admit that. I never really gave a rat's ass about her. I never liked her. I mean, I didn't want her to die, but all she ever did was annoy me. And as season 2 goes on, I care more and more about her, honestly. I mean, she's not one of my favorite characters. I won't even go as far to say as, like, I really like her, but I mean, I care about her. I care what she's going through, and I can understand what she's going through. They do a really good job at describing that, but with all that drama out of the way, it was irrational thinking on Madison's part for sure when it comes to flickering on the hotel lights. As we see at the end, Travis notices the lights, so it isn't completely for nothing, but Madison and Alicia don't know that, at least not yet. In the preview for next week's episode, it seems like the hotel group will have a big issue with survivors wanting to live where they live now, that everyone in the town knows that the hotel has people in power. Speaking of Travis, it is confirmed that he did leave Chris. We see that at least half of the next episode is going to be about the conversations and decisions that lead to Chris abandoning Travis. I'm going to be doing a completely separate video on Travis, Chris, and their situation within the next little bit here, so be sure to look out for that. But that's it for now, guys. Let me know how you feel about the direction this show is taking, along with anything that's happened in this episode. I really do love feedback and talking in the comments. And if you've made it this far, feel free to leave a like on the video, maybe even subscribe for more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.